We all hit low points in life. Sometimes tragedy strikes our family. Sometimes it's love lost or job loss. And we tend to think that that rock bottom experience, that will define our entire life. But what if rock bottom wasn't the definition of who we are, but merely a launching point for what God has for us? Well, in today's episode of the Live Faith First podcast, I sit down with Brad Johnson, and he went from having a public failure to hitting rock bottom, to bouncing back and bouncing better. And he's going to help us navigate through things that we can do to not only help us get back to where we were, but to thrive through that. Wisdom, grace, and forgiveness. We're going to discuss all of that today. So sit down and enjoy this episode of the Live Faith First podcast. We all face setbacks, unexpected losses, heartbreaks, failures, or just seasons where life punches us in the gut. And sometimes those lows feel like they've defined us or disqualified us. But what if we didn't just bounce back? What if we could actually bounce better? Today's guest has lived that story. From a public fall to radical restoration, Brad Johnson knows what it means to rebuild a life. Not just climbing back to where you were, but by moving forward with greater wisdom, deeper faith, and more freedom. So, Brad, welcome so much to the podcast.
Thank you, Elliot. It is an honor to be here. I appreciate the invitation, and I'm just so eager to engage with your audience and pray I make a contribution in their life.
Yeah, no, this is so good. And I remember hearing your story decade plus ago, however long that was. And so I'm really excited to kind of dig into that a little bit, but also what it looks like to find restoration and then thrive in that. And that is where I want to land today. But before we get there, a couple of things. One, Kris Jenner performed your wedding ceremony. Like, that is awesome. I can't wait to hear about that. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
All right. Yeah.
Dude, I don't know if there's any others on the face of the earth who've had Kris Jenner perform their wedding ceremony with your dad, I understand.
Yes, that's right.
We will get there. But before we do, would you give us the cliff notes of your life? Where were you born? Where were you raised? How did you get where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Born in Indiana. My dad was a pastor and in the Methodist church. And back in those days, they moved you at least every 5 years. So very transient childhood growing up. Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, back to Indiana, a couple different cities in Indiana. Dad didn't stay in the Methodist church, but I was in that pastor's home and environment where I had concluded, Elliot, and I know you can relate to this as a pastor's kid, I didn't want to be a pastor. It's like, I don't want this life. It's a glass house and a lot of rocks were thrown. And I just, I didn't want that kind of life. I was going to be a policeman. You know, you can carry a Bible or a gun. I was going the other route, right? So, but about 17, God just tugged at my heart and really led me to the path of being in ministry. I didn't actually, never really felt a calling to be like a lead pastor, the senior pastor. I just knew God had given me gifts to teach and gifts to lead. And that gift combination fits really well with lead pastor. So those were the opportunities I was given. I was in Kentucky, college, master's, doctorate, and pastoring churches. And I was leading a church in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And it was growing and thriving. And it was pretty contemporary for Kentucky back in the day. This was a long time ago. And a friend of a friend heard that Rick Warren was looking for a teaching pastor to come on staff, and we dated, that whole interview process, and really felt God's calling in it, and so we moved to California from Kentucky, and I was on staff. I was hired the same day as Lee Strobel was hired on staff there, and we came on both together as teaching pastors and have a friendship. And so I was there. I was teaching pastor. I was international missions pastor also, so a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
But after a few years, it was a big dynamic. It's a big church. At that time, between multiple services and all that they were doing, campuses and things, it's like 20,000 people on a weekend and 6 weekend services. And it was just, for our family dynamic, is just hard. So we just believed God was going to do something else for us. and took us to another church. And I guess that's where I realized the wheels were coming off my own internal world. I'd felt it before, but I couldn't identify it. I didn't know what it was. I don't know about your upbringing, Elliot, but I grew up in a home where you played hurt. We were in sports. My brother and I both, we were athletes all our life. And, crying wasn't allowed. Excuses, you couldn't quit. And so having conversations about feelings, that didn't exist in my childhood, right? And so we were raised, kids were to be seen, not heard, and you don't cry. Like there's this masculine thing put on us that's just what it meant to be a tough guy. You just don't let anybody see you cry. So I didn't know how to deal with feelings. And so I just suppressed and pushed them down, and grew increasingly unhappy and just pressed through. You play hurt. I also grew up in a family of secrets. And I share this a little bit in the book. It was a home where my dad as a pastor felt like, and I'm sure it had been put on him, that you have to show perfection, not imperfection. And that's really a downfall for many pastors, is living this imposter life, this imposter syndrome of not being authentic or congruent with who you really are. So, we'd see these things, tensions between mom and dad, fights at times, just the ugliness that sometimes was in our home. But we'd show up in that church parking lot, man, we had that smile, plastered on and march right through, good little soldiers. But holding that dichotomy, like a secret life and a public life, that became part of my thing too. So if you combine this, here I am depressed. I didn't even know it was depression. I didn't know what that meant, but I wasn't allowed to feel it or talk about it. And you just keep secrets. That ended up being the foundation to ruin me as I made different choices. It's not an excuse at all for what I did. I'm personally responsible 100% for what I did. But I did come to some understanding of how I got to that place. And if I had reached out for help earlier or acknowledged the pain I was feeling, I wanted to leave ministry. I felt too much pressure. The ministry I was in, I was more like a CEO than a pastor. It wasn't as big as Saddleback, but a 6,000 on a Sunday and a $6 million budget and a lot of staff and just more CEO pressure than pastor life. So I envisioned being. We had gone to a beach vacation, and there was this guy, and every day he would set up beach umbrellas. And then at the end of every day, he would take the beach umbrellas down. And I thought, I just want to be the beach umbrella guy. Right? That's all the pressure I wanted.
I'm telling you, I remember driving by a rock quarry on my way to work thinking, I want to just drive that tractor. How many tons of rock and which rock do you need? I will get that for you, and I will be efficient. I will be effective. It'll be in the back of your truck, and you'll be out of here in no time. Like, give me that. Now, I knew that that mindless job would eventually get old, but there was something about that. Like, just give me something I can do, and like no other pressures on me. So how did that end up manifesting for you? What did that end up kind of turning into out of that?
I began to drink heavily. More as medicine, just an escape from the internal tumult that I was feeling and didn't understand, had no frame of reference for how to deal with this because I never saw it modeled and was never allowed to explore that. And so here I am in my late 40s thinking, I don't know what to do. I felt so lost. And when you're hurting and lost, a huge desire is either escape or comfort. And I found comfort in the attention that I was getting inappropriately from other women. And it just felt good. And when you're hurting and struggling, it's like a drug. It's like a narcotic. I said it was like cocaine. I've never used cocaine, but I imagine that moment of ingestion, you're just euphoric for a period of time, but then you need another hit. Right. And then it becomes addictive. And that is what that behavior did for me. And I began slowly slipping from my marriage and my commitment to my marriage and my vows in my marriage. And I broke those vows. And once I crossed that line, there was like a spiritual and emotional break in me that life will never be the same again.
Yeah.
And there will be no coming back from this. And men can do one of two things at that point. They can just fall to their knees and repent and turn around right then and take whatever consequence for that limited amount of behavior. Or, like me, sadly, I'm wrecked. And as my therapist said, I'm going to go full speed at that brick wall. I'm just going to end it. I had 3 suicide attempts, just a horrible couple of years of my life that were just deeply dark and deeply broken. Never got caught. I just resigned because I couldn't stand myself. I hated me. I thought God hated me. I'd done a lot of harm to my family. I confessed to my family. They didn't know. I just broke everything that had been precious.
Yeah.
And the shame of that just suffocated me. I didn't know what to do with that other than I just need to die. Woke up from my 3rd suicide attempt thinking, my first thought actually was, I even failed at failure. I couldn't even do that right. Just what a loser. My second thought was confusion about why God wanted me alive when I was 100% sure he didn't. I felt I had gone beyond his grace. And I thought I at least need to find out why he would want me alive. And that tiny little thought, I see it now, I didn't see it in the moment, was my first little step back. Why would God want me alive? And it sent me forward. It gave me something to think about for the next few days. I began this journey of, well, first I need a job. I couldn't find work. A couple of opportunities came up, and some people in our community who I had hurt and disappointed kind of put a nix on those jobs, which, again, they couldn't do anything to me that I didn't think I deserved because, I felt I needed all the punishment that was available, but I couldn't get work. So I finally got a job part-time as a barista at Starbucks. And it was this is 20 years ago, $8.25 an hour plus tips. Had a 23-year-old boss, not that I'm bitter. I just, I cleaned the toilets and I mopped spills and I poured coffee and, the whole thing. I actually loved it. Yeah. Partly it's what you said, is the rock quarry. Right. Clock in, clock out. I took none of the stress of that job home. Right.
I want to talk about one aspect of that, though, because in that season, God put you at a Starbucks that was proximate to the church that you served in, where there was hurt for thousands of people. Can you talk to me? I want to get to the good stuff, like the recovery stuff. But before we get there, what did that look like for you?
There's no resurrection story without crucifixion. So, we have to do the dying before we really appreciate the living.
Yeah.
I had moved to a community like the next community over, but it's down a hill, and the two communities really don't, you don't shop in one or whatever. You just kind of stay in your little niche. So I was away from where I had lived and the church I had served. And I had applied for a Starbucks there because I'd seen a sign on the window hiring. And back then, I don't know if it's still true, for part-time, you could get insurance. So that's the only thing that drew me to it. I needed insurance. So I thought, I'm going to apply. Yeah. And she said, well, we just filled the last position, had an interview. She said, Brad, you'd be great for Starbucks. She said, I'm so sorry I can't hire you, but a manager in our region, at least last week, still needed a barista. Do you care if I pass your name along? And I told her I'd appreciate it. Well, it did end up being not only in proximity to the church I served. It was actually the Starbucks, Elliot, that I would sit in to write my sermons. And so I'm in this Starbucks. He hires me. I start, and the experience there was a mixed bag. Some people would walk in. Literally, I had a couple. I was there a year. A couple of people that yelled at me and just in front of everybody. I had some people I could see as they're coming in the door. They'd see me and they'd turn around and walk out. And then I had some people that would pray for me, just take my hands and pray for me, or in tears tell me that they still loved me and were praying for me, cheering for me. It was, I've thought about this a lot through the years. Sadly, I've known some other men who've gone the path that I did, and they tend to leave the area, which is what I wanted to do, but I couldn't find work anywhere out of the area. I had no money to move. And I know why God left me here. I'm still in the area. At first, it was for me, because I think if I'd left geographically, I would have just suppressed and put in a closet somewhere my past and just tried to get on with my life and not really do the 2 years of weekly therapy that I did. I don't think I'd have done that if I left. I don't think I would have done the character work I needed to do by looking in the eyes of people that I had personally hurt and damaged. I don't think I would have walked the path that I did that brought me full healing and restoration. So I'm really grateful now that I stayed. But, after a while, as I was healing, and then I would encounter people, and it was kind of clear they weren't healing from my behavior, I came to know that now is on them. And maybe one of the reasons God has me in this area is to help them process whatever healing journey that they need to take. I hope so, and things are certainly, substantially different and better than they were 20 years ago. So that Starbucks journey was an interesting journey.
That's incredible. And I want to pick back up on that in a second. But before we do that, talk to me, just describe grace. After your life journey to this point, how has the concept of grace maybe changed from the child growing up in Indiana and what grace was learned there, and then like what that looks like to you now? Can you talk about that journey and like describe it, maybe describe grace as best you possibly can?
Yeah, I came to Christ at 8. And though I had some cognition, some understanding that I was a sinner in need of a savior, gave my heart to Jesus and committed to follow him with my life, 8-year-old grace is like a Dixie cup of water. Yeah, I probably didn't need that much grace.
Right.
Right at 8. The grace I needed at 48 was like an ocean. And I didn't know the ocean existed. It's like a kid, who lives his whole life in the inner city, and he maybe sees a fire hydrant leave a little water in the gutter on the street, but he has no concept of an ocean. And though I taught it, preached it, could define it from the Greek, I still had in mind what God had done for me at 8. So when I needed an ocean at 48, I had no real understanding of that. Mm-hmm. So now that I do, that I've come to understand his grace is sufficient. That's sufficiency is really correlated to need. What was sufficient for me at 8 was not sufficient for me at 48. Right. And his sufficiency was still there. Yeah. And so it's impacted just how strongly I feel about what God offers to our planet. The other thing it's done radically is just remove judgmentalism from me.
You just took my next question right out of my mouth. Thank you.
Yeah. You can't swim in the ocean and deny people water.
Right. Yeah, I had a seminary professor say that we need to have a healthy understanding of our own ability to sin in order to truly show grace to those around us. And we've talked about this already a little bit today, but somehow pastors are supposed to be like closer to perfection, closer to God for sure than, the average person sitting in the chairs, which is false.
Is a false narrative.
It's
That's
false. And that somehow when a person gets on stage on a Sunday morning and gives a message that we believe is empowered by the Holy Spirit and grace and mercy and all of those things, that somehow it's integrated into pastors differently than everybody else, so
correct.
that we are more refined, more perfected. And the fact of the matter is we're all, beggars. We're all thirsty. We're all striving, and we're all aiming every day to be a little bit more like Jesus, to get
That's
a
right.
little bit better at it.
That's exactly
And it's hard because it is a high responsibility to be a pastor, to be a shepherd.
Absolutely.
The Bible is very clear about that.
Very clear.
At the same time, every pastor, every shepherd is just another human who's on their way to glory and trying to figure out what this journey looks like.
Yeah.
And so that's a tough one to try to live out. And I agree with you also that the older we get and the more we experience our inability to get it right all the time, the more it should allow us to be graceful for those and to be not okay, but to realize where we are in our own sinfulness, in our own ability to dishonor God every single day, even though every day I wake up trying to do better with God and never woke up and said, dude, I'm going to dishonor God today. Like I'm going to actively attempt.
People don't do that. No. You don't wake up and say, I'll just explode my life and the life of those around me. Yeah. Maybe some, bent or broken person who maybe even mentally would make a distinction like that. But, any normal, healthy person or generally healthy would not say, let's just blow it all up.
Right.
Nobody does that.
Right. All right. I'm going to go to the kind of grace and forgiveness are intertwined, but I do think there is a difference between the two. One, grace is something we receive and we give away.
Right.
But forgiveness, there's an internal, I got to forgive myself, and then there's a forgiveness to others. Can you talk about forgiveness for us and in light of your Starbucks experience maybe, or if there's other places where that comes out of, but talk about how powerful forgiveness is for us.
Yeah. Powerful is a good word. It's, I think it's still beyond the grasp of 99% of Christians. And now that sounds, grandiose, but I've thought about forgiveness a lot because I've needed it a lot, right? I think primarily we do it wrong because we have this whole. Let me start with this. If God's forgiveness is like our forgiveness, then he forgives us but doesn't want to have anything to do with us. He forgives us and will not have a relationship with us. He forgives us and stays distant from us. He forgives us and he becomes very self-protective so that we don't hurt him again. He forgives us, but the relationship is over. And that is not at all what we see in the Bible. It's not at all what we see in Christ. So to forgive like he does, we can no longer say things like, I forgive you, but I just don't want you in my life anymore. Well, then we have not forgiven as God has forgiven us. We've done something. We've maybe made a shift. Maybe we took a step in the right direction. But I don't think we're at forgiveness yet. I think forgiveness makes us once again completely vulnerable to being hurt again. We will allow someone next to our heart again. We will allow them into our home again. We will allow them into our life again. We will work to have a relationship with them again. And most of what the Christian community describes as forgiveness and what I have described as forgiveness most of my life also is not what God has done for us in Christ. And I'll give you a beautiful story. There's a man I know, and This was 35 years ago. Found out his wife was having an affair with his own brother. Betrayal, like, doesn't even begin to describe, right? The brokenness he felt, the way their families broke apart, devastated. It's just that whole family system was shattered. No holidays again, no birthdays again, no, the people who'd been with you since childhood out of your life. It's just like beyond a death, because they're still living in the same town, and the most horrific, betrayal in this man's life. And so when I met him and he told me this story, his brother married his ex-wife.
Oh, wow.
And then this man had gone on to find love again and was married. And then he and I became friends. And he's telling me this story. I said, where does your brother live now? Like, what happened? Where does this story go? He said, well, I'm just really pleased to tell you, I forgave him. And I said, Mark, like, that would be tough. He said, yeah, it wasn't easy. And I said, well, what does that look like for you? He said, well, we do Christmas together. We sit together in church every Sunday. Our kids play with their kids. We love each other.
Wow.
And I thought, he's one who got it. He's one who understood the depth of what forgiveness really, really, really looks like.
That's incredible.
It's an incredible story.
Yeah.
And should be a normal story in the Christian community, but it's so rare.
Yeah, it is. And something you said earlier, I think it's so challenging, but the idea of, I will forgive you, but I will not put myself in a place to be hurt by you again. I mean, that is our normal response to.
It's our normal response,
you, right? Even when we get to the point of forgiveness, sometimes it's a journey even to get to that point. But then there still is this like, but, and I think we justify it by saying, rightly so, I don't want to be hurt again. I don't need to be hurt again.
That's a human response.
Why would I put myself back in that place to be hurt by that person again? And
very human response.
Yeah. And with Peter, we see Jesus's full restoration, by the Sea of Galilee after his betrayal.
That's right.
And of course, the reliance on Peter to build the church. Not just
of all the people,
right? Like, we're good. We're all right, but like, no, we're good, and you got work to do because of this. Like, you go out and live in that grace and forgiveness.
Yeah.
And like, let's get this thing going. So let's talk about bounce back, bounce better.
Right.
We might land back in some of this other stuff again, but give us a 10,000-foot level of, this is your book, the title, Bounce Back, Bounce Better. I think we get both of those concepts, bringing them together. What does that look like? And what's the idea behind all that?
Yeah, it's a book I didn't want to write because I didn't want to revisit, those years. I've worked very, very hard to move beyond that and to have processed that and get clean about that and no longer feel shame about that. And just walking through the story, I remember I had an agent with the book at first, and he said, Brad, you're not raw enough. He said, you haven't described your pain enough. You haven't shared and disclosed enough for this book to have any kind of effect or influence. He said, you really need a rewrite. And I knew I'd, skirted the edge of safety and self-protection and all that. So to do that deep dive was a little tough, but the thing I had learned in my life, Elliot, was, let me start previously. I grew up in a religious system, in a faith system that really believed you could have a second chance, but it would be such a lesser, broken, insubstantial version that anything beyond your sin would be a tiny little limited, just kind of eke through an existence. And that's what I grew up with. The concept that you could live a bigger life, and by that I don't mean in any kind of boastful way, but influence, joy, contribution. That was foreign to me until I started living it.
Mhm.
And the opportunities I've had and the people I've gotten to help and the way God has used me and the joy I've had on this side of my brokenness is beyond anything I could have ever imagined. So I really wanted to say it can be better. Like and I've talked to many men who walk this journey and they reach out to me. I think I'm a little beacon of hope that maybe there is something, but they're just still not sure, and they're still in that very frail place. They want to believe there's something more, but they're not yet at the ability to believe that it could be extraordinarily more,
Yeah.
and it can be. So I have tried to encapsulate in this book that story of not just, oh well, he came back, ho hum, but that life can be better. And it should be. I'm more experienced. I have a lot more wisdom. That whole thing. I now know there's an ocean of grace. Like there's so many parts of my perspective that should enrich the remaining days of my life and make it expansive. And so, in a nutshell, it is not just the well, God will forgive you. Period. That abundant life verse, it didn't get ripped out of the Bible because you sinned.
Right. Yes. Uh, what are some of the biggest hindrances people end up having to bouncing back? Probably one, but bouncing better, like so that things are. And I
Yeah,
love
that's a
the
good
idea
question.
that you say of like in your book, you say you never go back to zero again.
Right?
You've always progressed. Like there's something you've learned, there's something you've grown from. But what are some of the things that hinder us from like overcoming that mindset?
That's a great question. Some of it is mindset, and mindset tends to be subconscious beliefs that were installed, early on. So some of it was my old theology, just this, very kind of harsh, condemning God. And once you make him mad, he's always going to be kind of half mad for the rest of your life. There's just
He's
really,
been
and
he was disappointed at me till I was probably 35.
that's
It
exactly right.
took me that long to realize he actually does like me, maybe even love me, but
Right?
not disappointed.
That's exactly right. So I think it is, uncovering some of that old, wrong belief structure and dismantling that, and then replacing that with the truth of who God really is, what Jesus really accomplished, taking what Jesus did to the fullest extent that our minds can allow it to be. So getting past bad theology, I think, is some getting past aspects of the Christian community, and not necessarily their behavior, but our attitude about their behavior. So for me,
Mm.
I was really angry at people who were angry at me. Like I was treated very, very harshly in the Christian community, and the things that were said to me were just uh, horribly wounding. And I stayed stuck in that place in terms of bouncing back. There was just no bounce because I just was living in the wound, living in the criticism, living in the harshness, confused about the contradiction of what I thought Christian behavior would be, let alone mine, right? Uh, and then God began a process. It was maybe the hardest thing I had to go through, was learning to give mercy to unmerciful people.
Mm.
And that allowed me then to experience in a greater depth the mercy of God. So the bouncing back, I was kind of set free to bounce, to live my life. I wasn't chained to my emotional attachment to the wound and to the treatment. And I no longer, so, as long as I'm mad at the other person, I'm still living in an external world. And in some way, their behavior is still responsible for what I can or can't do. But once
Yes.
I freed myself from that I have agency and I don't have to be bound, that helped me bounce better.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, bad theology, my response to people and circumstances around me, taking some agency over the decisions I make, that God and I really are a majority, and we can face this and build better. That helped me a lot.
Yeah. There's times where I hear other people's voices, not in any psychological, like creepy way, but that comment that person made or that thing. And do you have something you do to combat those comments? Because I mean, I know for me, they would come back 20 years later. I know when I'm in an emotionally bad space, that those are the voices that start rolling around in my head some. Do you have practices you do, or anything
Well,
that can help you fight against that when they come
not
back?
necessarily practices that I do. There was I'll give you a point in time, but also once I did the good identity work of really who I am. Like it just, this is going to be a little bold, but my dad, like, is God. We say, Jeff Bezos' wedding's going on in Venice or whatever. I don't know if you've been reading about that in the news, but it's however many, millions of dollars and all that. We think, wow, that is just vast wealth. Well, you know what? My dad made him. Like, if I can really get my head around the bigness of God, and then that somehow I am in relation with him as a child, and he receives me as he received the prodigal and gives me all things he has, it really helped me get past the shame that I had. So the voices tend to bring us back to shame. Shame is an identity. Guilt can be redemptive. The Bible talks about a sorrow that leads to repentance. Guilt, I feel badly about what I did, is different than I am what I did. And so to say I failed is different than to say I'm a failure. And the old voices tend to go to identity. They call us a name that we receive, right? And so I was studying the prodigal son, of course, my favorite story in the Bible, just because it is my story. And I was reading this, I don't know if it was commentary or it was historical background on the culture of the time. And to shame a family was punishable by death. I mean, there's still Middle Eastern cultures that have what's called shame killing. You can kill a child if they shame the family. But one aspect of shaming the family meant you could never again look your dad in the eyes. So if you ever approached your father after shaming the family, your head had to be down. Well, I then just began to visualize the prodigal, coming back and the dad running to him. But he's not really able to pay much attention to that because he can't dare look his father in the face because he has shamed the father and shamed the family. So in my mind, this is a glorified imagination. I see the father lifting the son's face, just fingertips under his chin. Don't hang your head. Don't hang your head. Look me in the eye. You're not the servant you were willing to be out in the field. He calls him son. And I grappled with that for many months, 8 or 9 months. But once it landed with me, I've never gone back. So I know who I am because God has, like if you need like a physical device, if you hear those voices to bring you back to reality, to your real identity, just touch your fingertips under your chin as the Father's fingertips. Don't hang your head. Don't listen. That voice is telling you to put your head down. Lift your chin. Look me in the eyes. You are my son, and I'm God's son, and I won't tolerate any less. I won't accept any less. I don't receive any less than that. So when those voices come back, now I can say just with a lot of calm confidence, that's a lie. That's a lie. I am worthy. I'm loved. I'm God's son. And there's no changing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. One of the things about that story that I imagine the prodigal son, when he was, you know, longing to eat the pods that the pigs were eating, saying, I have a dad and the servants are well fed, was there was the shame, but then there was the fear. Can we talk a little bit about fear here today? Like, what what is about fear that pulls us back, and like what's is there healthy fear, or is that just being afraid or careful? I don't know. Like, can we talk, and really I'd love to talk about how fear holds us back, like what it is about fear that keeps us from bouncing back, bouncing better.
Yeah, that's a great question. Fear, like, going back just sort of in human development and brain development, is a survival mechanism. It is what keeps us, from approaching a fire too closely, or, back in the day, taking on a lion when you lived in a cave, or whatever. It's like there is a healthy fear in the way of survival, and our brains are wired. People get confused. Our minds were not designed for success; they were designed for survival. And so we have the amygdala, and it's that fight, flight, fawn or freeze, part of us, and that's just to keep us safe, and it's how we stay alive. You hear a noise in the night. It's a healthy fear to be responsive to that, because what if that means there's danger in my house, right? So there is that kind of fear. But the fear, like when the Bible and Jesus, 366 times, don't fear, don't fear, don't fear. He's not talking about that. He's not talking about survival fear or just common sense. I call that just common sense. He's talking about the fear that stops you from progress, the fear of judgment, the fear of failure. And that goes to identity again. So if I try and fail, I am a failure. Therefore, I am afraid to try. But if I understand, if I try and I fail, I have simply just failed in that moment. And now I have data, information to help me be more successful at that the next time. But it has nothing to do with my identity. I'm still a child of God, worthy of not only being loved by Him, but being loved by others. I am worthy of abundance. God gives me all things He has: the rings on the finger, the shoes on the feet, the clothes on the back. Those were God's clothes. He gives me all things He has. Fatted calf, it'd been saved for a special. He gave me the best He had. If I live underneath that because of fear, I think God is saying, what are you missing here? I give you all things. Nothing will change our relationship. Get out there and go for it. Try. Give it your best shot.
Yeah. The parable of the talents is the one that is always so convicting to me.
Sure.
I forget if it's the 521 or the 531 or whatever
Right.
the three numbers are.
Exactly.
But it's the guy with the one who buries it.
Yeah.
And that's there's a few verses that rotate in my head, and that's always been one of them. Like, I don't want to be the person who took the one talent and buried it safely. And I knew who you were, God. You are a God who reaps where you did not sow. Like, you're out there doing amazing things, and I didn't want you to be mad at me, upset with me, disappointed in me. So I'm just going to give you back what you gave me. And God's response was, dude, you could at least taken it to the bank. Get me, 3.5%, 5%. Give me a little something on the investment that I put in you. But you gave me nothing. You gave me no return at all. And what does it take to overcome the one talent guy from the 7 talent guy? Like, what is it? Because you kind of think, well, the 7 talent guy, I get it, because you had everything at your disposal. Like, you had plenty. You could have gone out and bought, right? Versus the guy with the one, I'm always thinking, like, it's kind of cheap of God to give him one. I kind of don't blame him. Like, I'm that way. Like, well, I only got $100, right? I mean, if I had 10,000, or if I had Jeff Bezos money, well, that's different. all I got is $100, so let's just be safe. Are there
Right.
things we can do to kind of get us out of that I only have a
Yeah.
$100 concept?
Yeah, scarcity is taught as a kid. If your parents ever said, "Well, we got to put that back. We can't afford it," or you go to a restaurant, you need to order from this section of the menu. We're taught scarcity uh, a lot of ways, and we translate our earthly experience to our theology. And so we believe God is like that. We've got to be really, really cautious. We got to check the price. We got to like that he doesn't have enough, and we're not going to have enough. And that's what this guy. It was his faulty understanding of his father. So it really does. It really does go to some work we have to do, Elliot, to go back to what is it we believe about God. Who do we really believe he is? What is he really like? And I understand the role of the Old Testament, but so many people live with an Old Testament understanding of God, harsh and angry, that it clouds everything that Jesus came to teach us in the New Testament. I think harsh and angry in the Old Testament was just merely a setup for how impossible it is to earn our way. So that we then need this amazing ocean of grace in the New Testament. So I think we have to fundamentally change what we believe about God. I think, we say abundant life, but then we put all these qualifiers. We're always talking about heaven and it's not here. And, right now it's going to be hard and limited. No, it's not. That's a story that we tell ourselves and we believe. So you just got to tell a different story about who God is and the abundance that's available in all areas of life. And so this guy, I have this one talent, but the master is going to be mean to me if I blow it. That was his theology. That was my theology. And what he realized in that moment when he's confronted by the master, oh, he's not like that at all. And doggone it, I just wasted my shot. Yeah. So we don't waste our shot. We go for it. The master's pleased that we tried. That's all. That's what he wanted him to do. You could have tried something, right?
Right.
He's pleased that we tried, and we didn't sit on what he gave us.
Yeah. I'll circle it back to something you said earlier, but just that idea that failing doesn't make us a failure, nor does it make God disappointed in us because things didn't work out. And I think the longer we live, the more insight we get into God just saying, well, it may not have been the perfect path I would have wanted you on, but I needed you here. In order to get you here, I needed you to go through this stuff. And I say it all the time, like, my wife would not be my wife if she hadn't gone through the things that she went through in her life. And if her and I had met when we were both 19, we probably wouldn't even have liked each other. Right? Because we hadn't been refined by the world and our decisions and all of those things. And we somehow think that, oh, I need to be ashamed of that thing that I went through. And again, I understand we don't all do things that are, perfect and uplifting to God and all those things. But at the same time, God can redeem, and God does redeem, and God does use that as we move forward for refinement. It's one of the reasons I love Hebrews 12, where God's just talking about the discipline. And I've been saying this a lot, where God, he disciplines those that he loves. And the verse that at the end of that section is, there is a promise for those that learn from the discipline. There is a promise of a harvest of peace and righteousness. And that has been a verse that I've hung with for a couple of decades now.
Yeah,
because I need peace and I need righteousness, but I also know my introspection on the discipline, even if it's self-imposed idiocy that I've done, are things that God will take and go like, no. I'm going to let you learn some stuff, and then you can pass this on to others. Like, this is not just for you either. This is so that those around you would grow in it. And so
Yeah, that's right. Here's a shift, and would have helped the guy with the one talent. He saw God as punishing, not as a disciplining God. Punishment is just inflict pain as to exact a price because you made a mistake, you blew it, you broke a law, whatever. My little 7-pound dog's going to get ready to bark. Sorry about that. And I can't get to him. He's across the room. Pepper, stop. He's not going to stop. Sometimes he knows there's a cat over there that he doesn't like, and then he's really tough about it. But discipline, the word actually means to correct course. Correct the course, like a sailboat. Bring it back in line. And that's what God does. So let's just say the guy with the one had not even invested in the bank, invested it anywhere, and lost it. God would not have been angry. He would have said, what did we learn? What do you know now about investments that you didn't know before?
Right.
And I think he would have given him another talent. Let's try again. Right. It's like a toddler walking. Like, could you imagine if we said to our kid, because they toddled and fell, well, you're a bad walker. You're never going to get this, so you might as well quit. And of course, we actually cheer the falls and the attempts and the falls and the attempts. We cheer it. Yes. And God's better at that than we are.
Yeah. That's so good. I love that. All right. I do have to ask you about your wedding being officiated by Kris Jenner.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Give us some background on that one.
I'll give you the cliff notes. Kris reached out to me on my way back. She knew me. I didn't know they had attended the church that I had led. It was a big church, and I didn't know everybody. I didn't know them, and so we became friends, and I tell that story in the book. And so there's more detail there, but we became friends, and we used to walk in the mornings. And I was dating who is my wife now, who lived a couple hours away, but our relationship was progressing to the point she had decided to sell her home there and get a condo closer so that we could build on our relationship. She wanted to be involved in the new church that was starting and all that too. And so we're walking, and she joined us on a walk. My wife, my girlfriend at the time, but my wife now, joined Kris Jenner and I on our morning walk, and they became friends. And Kris offered her a job to be her executive assistant, which she was for about 6 years. And so we just had a friendship. And so we were sitting in Kris's backyard one evening, and we were talking to her about our upcoming wedding. And she was like, well, where are you going to get married? And we said, well, probably the place where we were having church services. And she said, why not do it at my house? And then this is Kris, she's an idea a minute person. How about I do it? How about I officiate? I said, well, my dad's a pastor, and I had talked to him about it. And she said, great, we'll just do it together. So that's what it was. So she participated in it, and it was at her home, not the home she has now, but at the home at the time. And it was just a fun experience with a friend.
Yeah, that is so awesome. That is so awesome. And your church, there's some celebrity culture in your church, some celebrities. I think you said LeAnn Rimes.
She sang at our wedding.
At your wedding. Like, that's awesome. Just kind of going to pivot to that for a second. How do you approach being a pastor to celebrities? Does that change at all?
Yeah, it does. It's very important, I think, that pastors, I've seen pastors attached to celebrities, and there's a very real sense of they're trying to get as close to that same limelight as the celebrity, to be known as the pastor to celebrities or whatever. And it's a little exploitive. And so Karen and I made the decision, mainly because we started with Kris as friends. I didn't even know anything about the show when I first met her. And so we just decided we will never be a gateway to her. Like, if somebody comes to us, hey, could you get me an appointment? Could you get my idea in front of her? Could you? Never. And we haven't. Not in 20 years. And we would not exploit her for our own gain. And because of that, she trusts us,
Yeah.
and we're still able to be close friends. Because at that point, and this is true for a lot of celebrities, they do question the motives of the people who want to be around them. We know a woman, she's not a celebrity, but she's very wealthy. She had trouble dating because she couldn't trust that people didn't want her for her money. So it's the same kind of idea. It's how do you build trust in that culture? There's a big downside to it. I mean, there's so many false tabloid kind of stories about, Kris and her relationship. She owns the church. I mean, you can read all kinds of stuff out there. Well, you step into that world, and then the tabloid experience is going to be a part of it as well. And I wasn't prepared for that. I just didn't anticipate that comes with it. And then there's this thing, I think pastors, and actually I'd fallen into it in the church where I fell. We do live in proximity to celebrity and Hollywood and image and branding and all that. And being a celebrity, it has attraction in particularly where we live geographically.
Yeah.
So I'm at this church, and I had a security team. Why did I have a security team? But it was very heady, I'll tell you. It was very pride producing. I had a green room, backstage little room stocked with food and nice furniture, and I had a security guard outside the door. What the heck was I thinking? Yeah. But it feeds into pride, and it feeds in. So I guess my first thing is, if you're going to in any way deal with someone who has a type of celebrity, please be trustworthy, and please don't exploit them. Yeah. And please don't get sucked into trying to become a celebrity yourself.
Yeah. That's so good. I can imagine even the draw around the financial piece of like, well, I can just Google how much is Kris Jenner worth, right? And then to go, or any other celebrity, right? And get a rough number, and then like, well, why aren't you more generous? Or how can I get more of that generosity? And that generosity can be finances, but like you say, it could be opportunities. It could be, well, I gain favor with this person because I'm going to get access to that person, or because yeah, I love your approach there. That as pastor, that's not what I'm hearing you say. Is that's not my role. My role here is to be a spiritual shepherd as much as I can to a loved child of God.
That's
and
it.
The fact
that's
that
it. It really is it.
Or influence might be larger than the next person doesn't change anything.
That's exactly
or shouldn't change anything.
Yep. That's exactly.
Cool. Thank you for that. All right, we'll segue back out of that again, because I have a few more quick questions I want to talk about your bounce back, bounce better. Okay, you talk about the concept of manifesting, and now when as soon as I say that, I start laughing. One, because like, man, if I had said that in the 80s or 90s to my dad, he would have been like, dude, what kind of new age nonsense are you talking about right now? We don't do crystals, and we don't do manifesting, right? That's even though I remember, so my dad used to play tennis, and he had a VHS tape that he would watch before he played tennis to help him learn how to visualize.
That's right.
Playing tennis better, what his stroke was going to look like, how he was going to respond, all of those kinds of things. And so would you talk a little bit about just the power of imagination and emotion and how like that actually helps us move forward?
It does help us. Yeah,
get over the word manifest if that's holding you back.
Right. Yeah. I throw manifestation and attraction together, and both of those can be very upsetting to some people if they're just set there, if you just leave them out there. But it goes back to just the wonderful design of our designer. Like the way God made us is fascinating. So neuroscience is an avocation of mine, and I kind of nerd out on it a little bit. So our minds are especially powerful if we think about our future and attach emotion while we're thinking about our future. This is why vision boards don't work. This is why Post-it notes of affirmations on your bathroom mirror don't work, because they're just statements and thoughts without emotion. So you actually have to have emotion. If you think about your strongest memories, Elliot, in your whole life, they're always attached to emotion. It might have been a birthday party where there was joy, or there might have been some tragedy in your family where there was sorrow. The most vivid memories have emotion attached. So it makes sense that thinking about our future, the strongest thoughts we have about our future will be those that have emotion attached to them. So visualization is using the imagination you have. Image of God, imago Dei, that's the root word for imagination. So God had imagination. The first thing we're taught about God is not his love, not his power, but his creativity. God, in the beginning, God created. It's the first thing he does, the first thing we're taught. We're in his image, so we're creative, imaginative beings, and using that to think about the life we want, the person we want to become, the contribution we want to make, the faith we want to have, the money we want to earn, the relationship we want to have. We're given that by God. Now, neuroscientifically, what we know is that there's something in our brain called the reticular activating system, which is like a super filter, and it actually allows in what we focus on. So if we focus on with emotion the future we want, ideas that support that are allowed through the filter into our mind. So our subconscious mind begins to problem solve. That's part of what happens. I don't know if I know you have. Everybody has. You wake up kind of in the middle of the night or in the early morning hours, and you have an answer to the problem you've been ruminating on. You have an idea for a solution. You have an idea for the next project, because the brain has been working even while you're sleeping. And your reticular activating system has let in the things that you're focusing on. So you have this issue, this problem, you're seeking solutions. The mind goes to work to support that. Same thing. So if I want to get a different job, start another career, and I feel what it would be like to have that job or to be in that career field. So I have attached emotion. Now the reticular activating system will allow in ideas to support that, or to make me super or acutely aware of opportunities. So attraction and manifestation is actually heightened perception. So it's not like something magically just drops out of the sky right in front of us because we had a vision board. It's because our minds are now aware. Oh, we're connecting the dots. That's an opportunity that would help me get this next career. It's perception. We begin to see. Jesus says, "Let those with eyes see." I mean, it's a weird statement. What does that mean? It means exactly this. There are people who have eyes, but they just don't see opportunity because they're only thinking negative. They don't envision the future they want. They're only envisioning the bad circumstances they have, and they wonder, why is everybody else getting answers and I'm not? Is it that the answers aren't there? No. It's because they are not filtering in the reticular activating system. Life is bad. My circumstances are bad. So the reticular activating system says, well, that's what you're focused on. That's what I'll let in. And now you only allow in your brain confirming evidence. So manifestation is an attraction. Attraction is seeing opportunities that have always been there, but now we're focused on them. That's it. But it feels like we brought something into our life. No, we just opened our eyes. Mm-hmm. And manifestation is achieving what you focused on and felt emotion about. And anybody worth their salt that teaches manifestation or attraction will talk about intentional aligned action. You don't just sit there and things come to you. You become aware of opportunities, but you have to take steps. And in our faith perspective, it would be faith and works. It'd just be good, solid Book of James stuff right there, right? If you just believe it without taking action, you don't get it. Yeah. But if you believe it, which is both seeing and feeling as if you already have it. Jesus said in Mark, when you pray as if you have already received it. So what would it feel like to have received it? So it's that seeing it and feeling it. But then James would say, now go to work for it. But now, because we see, our work is aligned and it just feels more effective. And it seems like things come easier or quicker. But it's only because what started as imagination with feeling Our brains started putting the pieces together. We're now starting to see opportunities that align with that. Now we can take action that aligns with that. It just makes things happen faster.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. And I think it circles around with so much that we've talked about today, whether it's around fear or shame
Yeah,
or guilt. And like when we sit and that's the thing that our filter is, we will see things to be afraid of.
that's
We
right.
will see things to make us feel shameful or whatever the hang up is, right? You talk about 4 different things you got to get rid of, right? Who others expect me to be, who I didn't think it would be this way, right? All of those things. But if those are what we focused on, then we'll see that.
That's right.
But
That's
if
right.
we're like starting to adjust our brain in such a way that it like you say, it opens your eyes to what was already in front of you.
That's
And
what it does. So it feels like I brought something new into my life. No, I just actually began to see. So I'll give you an example. If you wanted to buy a white Range Rover,
it's so true.
and that's what you want, and you've gone online, you've looked at the Range Rover site, and you've looked at the package you'd put together and the options you'd put on it, you're thinking about it. The next day you're on the highway, you'll see so many white Range Rovers.
It's
Now, are
incredible.
they suddenly there?
No. Especially not in Southern California.
That's right. That's right. But that's probably why I said that, right? But your mind, your reticular activating system is allowing in what you're focused on.
Yep.
They've always been there. You just didn't see them. Did I attract that? No, now I have heightened perception. Feels like attraction. That's why the word got coined, but it's actually heightened perception.
Yeah. I love it. All right. If somebody wanted to get started on their bounce better journey, what is one thing that you would give somebody today to say, hey, here's a step you can take today to kind of to start that journey?
Yeah, it would be imagine yourself flat on your back, wondering what's next, or have you missed your opportunity, your chance? Is there really the opportunity to co-create with God the life you want? I want you to hear God say, I have a purpose for your life, and I want you to start today discovering what that is. That's where I started. I woke up from a drug overdose, EMTs around my bed, sheriff's department broke into my house. And I thought, why does God want me alive? And I felt like I had a responsibility. So let's go to your great illustration about the guy with one talent. God, what do you want me to do with what I have? That'd be another way to frame that question. Flat on your back, is there a future? And God's like, well, what do you already have in your hands? What are your desires? What are your experiences? What are your talents and your just natural abilities? What brings meaning? What's meaningful and valuable? What are your values? Like, you start with some of those questions, you begin to formulate, and your brain will help you formulate a path forward. And probably the second thing is really to go to work on good theology, good solid theology of a God who has, like this verse, just, I love it. He has planned for us, Elliot, what's beyond our imagination. It's a verse in the Bible. More than you can ask, think, or imagine.
Yeah.
So I had a friend of mine say, what do you want to ask God for? And I told him. He said, double it. Because God wants to give you more than you ask. What can you imagine God doing in your life? He wants to do more than you can imagine. Like, we get our head around that theology, it'll change our life.
Yeah, I love that. All right, this is my last question for you. What's exciting you right now? It could be a Bible verse, something happening in your family, a project you're working on. But what's one thing when you think about it, it just makes you happy, makes a smile on your face?
Yeah, I'm very excited. My wife and I put together an online community, an online membership, and it's brand new. And we're actually allowing in only what we're calling case study members right now for a very reduced price, because we want to get experience with this framework of helping people change their belief structures, around who they are, around who God is, change their sense of worth and value. We actually teach what I think is the proper, pathway of manifestation and attraction. We just talk about how someone actually can have a fresh start. It's called Fresh Start. So it's what is my future? Who am I really? You get to a certain part in life and people begin to ask, I think I lost myself. I've been so long being a dad or a spouse or a worker or a caregiver or whatever it is. We wear all these labels. Then we get to kind of midlife-ish, 40 and above, let's say. And it's like, yeah, but who am I? And so we help people in their identity work, and then we help people align that with a purpose that will wake them up excited and bring great fulfillment to their life. And it's called Fresh Start, and it's a new online community, and we're super excited about it.
I love it. I love it. Brad, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, a journey thus far. You got a long time left.
Long time left.
Using you, but thank you. And for your vulnerability. I really, really appreciate that. It is already healing and will continue to be healing to people and help them on their journey. So thank you.
Thank you, Elliot. I'm honored to have been a part of this. I love you. I love your family. And I'm so grateful to have had this experience today with you.
Yeah. Thank you. Hey, and everybody else out there today, let's go live faith first.
There you go. I love it.
Hey, you're still here. That means you enjoyed our conversation with Brad today. That was so much fun. I love stories of redemption. I love stories of where God's grace shows up and allows people to move forward in amazing ways. And so here's the one thing that I'd love you to consider and tell us about. What is the thing that is holding you back right now? Or what is the thing that God has given you and you just haven't lived into that yet? What's that talent that you have? So tell us about it. We want to hear about it in the comments below, but also we want you to start living that way for Jesus. All right, everybody, let's go live faith first.